So everybody keep your fingers crossed for Thunderstorm. Well, I filmed the mid-year freakout tag. Like, how poetic would that be if that happens? Oh, now you know everything you need to know about me. She injures herself shucking oysters at house parties, but she likes wholesome books. I hope I'm not talking too fast for you. But then, on the other hand, if I'm talking that fast, you don't have to watch the video at 2 times the speed because I'm already talking super fast. I'm doing the automation for you on this video. Here we are. It's that time of year again, and yeah, boy, does time fly. So if you want to check out the mid-year freak out tag version from last year, I will leave it in the description box below. I don't think I did it the year before because I think I was too new to BookTube, but I might have. If I did, I will leave the very first one I did below as well. I've only been on YouTube for three years, 2.5 years, so I've only done this a couple of times. So the questions are, I don't think they've changed. There's only one that I usually skip over. Best book you've read so far in 2023? That is such a hard question. I always have a hard time with the end of the year selections for the best ofs, but I am, for this college course reading vlog, currently reading a book that is so good, and this is the first time that I've had this experience in a really long time. Wait, I'll preface this by saying that in the quarter crisis tag, I said that Giovanni's Room was the best book that I've read so far this year, possibly one of the best books I'll ever read. And I stand true to that. I still think it's going to be, like, I don't know how you can compare very much to James Baldwin. I'm currently reading with Sandy from Miss Reads a Lot. She has a read-along going for Go Tell It on the Mountain, and it's really good as well. I'm really enjoying the style of writing, and I'm really enjoying the topics and the way that he approaches topics. So this will be another favorite. And I guess last time I did the best of, I think I excluded classics from that list because my logic for that was they're classics for a reason. And so of course, if they've stood the test of time, they're going to be excellent, excellent books. So leaving classics aside, the best book so far, and the one that I don't want to let go, I think some of you might know what I'm about to say. I love it so much. I don't want it to be over. I have 30 pages left of this book, and I don't want the book to end. And I haven't had that experience in such a long time. And it's Tin Man, and it's killing me because I don't want it to be over because I love it so much. So I'm reading this for the college course reading vlog, which I'm not quite finished with, but it should be up in the next week or so. So I'll be talking more about it, or you'll be able to see my kind of live reactions to this book. But this book is just, oh my goodness, it's so beautiful, it's so wonderful. I'm going to do that thing that Charlie does where she hugs her book. I'm in love with this book. It's so, so, so good. I think I'll be able to gather my thoughts a little bit better as to why, but it's hard to explain. So just from a feeling perspective, and again, the question is the best book you've read this year, which I'm just treating it as, this is it because it's the first book where I don't want it to be over. And it's quite short, and I have 30 pages left, and I just don't want it to be over. And I'll talk about it a little bit more. Like, I think that's the effect that Sarah Winman wanted to have on her reader for this story. It makes sense. It's emoting something that the characters have had to experience, and she's doing a really good job of creating that experience for the reader where you don't want this to end. So I'll stop gushing and I'll put it aside. I know that some of the viewers who watch my channel have read Tin Man and have told me how much they loved it too. A close second is Mapping the Interior, where I'm also reading this for the college vlog. I'll talk more about it in that, but this is so good. It's a novella, so I don't know if it qualifies by Stephen Graham Jones. It's a story about a young man, a 15-year-old boy named Junior, who thinks he sees his father's ghost one evening, but it's really an exploration of intergenerational trauma and a kind of a coming-of-age story and an exploration of the oppression of Indigenous peoples and how they're kept oppressed from one generation to the next, just trying to be brief. Fantastic. A couple of honorable mentions. A Passage North I just read for the Asian Readathon and really fell in love with this book. I talked about it in my most recent wrap-up, so you can check out that video. It's just so, the writing is so intimate, just really captured me as well. And it's an exploration of human relationships, and it's really intimate and really well done. So that's like, that could be in my top 10. Earlier in the year, I read the Book of Form and Emptiness with Lori, and actually I was in New Hampshire and I did buy just a couple of books, which I do like a little mini book haul in my reading vlog, which is coming up. But I picked up, I realized I didn't have a copy of A Tale for the Time Being by Ruth Ozeki, which I'd read a decade ago when it came out and loved, and I think I'm going to reread it. I was considering giving it to my daughter, which I would still like to do, but I think I might reread it this year because this book is up there for me as well. It gave me all the feels, and it made me want to go back and read this one. I talk about this quite extensively, including the symbolism of crows in one of my wrap-up videos for March. I'll leave it linked in the description box below. The last mention that I need to make for best book I've read so far, well, there's two more. Another one would be The Swimmers by Julie Otsuka. I talked about this book in a recent wrap-up as well. It really stands out to me still as being one of the better books that I've read in the first half of the year. Just something about it. I don't know if it's just because it hits very close to home, because it's about a woman who has dementia, Alzheimer's, and it's also about a community pool. So both of those things I have really close. Both of those topics are very close to my heart. So I think that's the reason why it captured me so much. The Marriage Portrait, fell in love with the story, fell in love with Lucrezia, fell in love again with her writing. And actually I did read Hamnet this year. I read it in the early part of the year and I really enjoyed it too. But I actually think, controversial as it might be for some people who like Maggie O'Farrell, I think for me, The Marriage Portrait was even better than Hamnet. Having said that, I wonder if I should go back and read Hamnet again. So fantastic. Loved, loved, loved. Next question is the best sequel you've read so far. I'm going to skip over that because I don't tend to read books that are sequels or parts of trilogies or parts. I do sometimes, but I don't have any on my list for this year. The third question, new release you haven't read yet but want to. So I just got out of the library and I just watched Scott's video where he talked about some new releases, and he had some good things to say about this book, although I think Kit found it boring because I was following her Instagram and she said it was deadly boring, I think. So we'll see what I think, and that's Claire Fuller's, I managed to get it from the library, The Memory of Animals. This is a dystopian story about a woman, about a plague and a woman who gets a vaccine for the plague. I don't know where it goes exactly. Scott was saying that it's very different from Unsettled Ground, which was one of my favorite books from last year. So to kind of manage your expectations around this book, but I'm still really looking forward to reading it. I'm excited. I like a good dystopian plague. I'm still trying to process the whole COVID thing, so I'm looking forward to this one. Very happy I was able to get it from the library, actually. Biggest disappointment. Biggest disappointment. Oh, I forgot to bring it. I haven't put it in the book box yet, but if you watch my latest wrap-up, you know the book I'm talking about. Hotline. Biggest disappointment. I talked about this and why it was disappointing to me in my wrap-up, my most recent wrap-up video. Mostly, I actually DNF'd this book, which is something that I rarely do. Mostly the problem that I had with this book was the writing of the female protagonist. To me, it was not, it was not believable. It was very cliched. So long story short, I just had a problem with the writing. I just found it was, yeah, I just had a problem with this book. I didn't like the writing, and I didn't think it was very original. And that was disappointing because I'd heard so many good things about Hotline. It was very It is an example for me. This is an example of a book that was overhyped. Biggest surprise. So biggest surprises are Tin Man and Mapping the Interior, because I wouldn't even be reading these books if my daughter hadn't suggested them to me, and they're amazing, fantastic. And then this book, which I took out of the library and I'm not quite finished, it's called Francie's Got a Gun by Carrie Snyder. I talked about this in my TBR for this month, and I'm loving it. It's such a huge surprise. It's one of those situations where you walk into the library or the bookstore and you're not expecting a book to be as good as you think it's going to be, or you don't know anything about it. And this is up there. The other one that was a big surprise, I just have to get my copy. So the other book that really surprised me that I wasn't expecting really anything from is The Rooftop Garden, another Canadian author. This is a debut novel. I talked about it in my most recent wrap-up, and it just wasn't what I was expecting. I didn't know what I was expecting. It said political thriller, and in the end, it's like this very close kind of character study of a boy who becomes part of a radical extremist group. And it's very compassionately written towards the main character, Matthew, and the woman who he's friends with when he's a child, and her worry for him and her concern for him, a woman named Nabila. And it just was not something I was expecting. Again, I just picked it up, looked interesting in the bookstore, and it totally surprised me, and I was really happy I'd read it. And I think also I could say A Passage North was a big surprise, because it was so good. I'd heard people talking about it, but for whatever reason the topic didn't appeal that much to me, the way it was described. And it's so good. It's so well written. I love it when you find a book that has amazing writing or deals with a topic in an interesting way. That's always a really cool surprise. Favorite new author, debut, or new to you? Gosh, there's so many books that I've read this year that were so good, that were new to me authors. For example, Sarah Winman, Tin Man, like 100%. Arguably, you could say Maggie O'Farrell, because I hadn't read anything of hers until this year. You could say James Baldwin, because I hadn't read anything of his until this year. I mean, it's just kind of crazy. I'm having such a good reading year, and it's all thanks to you guys and to YouTube, and I kind of can't believe it. I'm having so much fun. I'm having such a good reading year. Thank you so much. Really, truly. I know it sounds cheesy, but I mean it from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much, everybody. All the booktubers, all the subscribers, buddy reading, all of it is just making me have so many positive experiences. I know I gush when I get on the channel, but okay, back to the questions. Newest fictional crush. Okay, so I think that I have a bit of a crush on Junior from this book, for sure. He's at least one of my new favorite characters, and I think I have a bit of a crush on, let's get more to the point. I think I have a crush on Stephen Graham Jones. That's who I have a crush on. The question should be not fictional crush, but which author do you have a crush on? And I do think that also Anuk, Arudpragasam, probably have a crush on this author as well, and the main character, the narrator of the story. But if it's a truly fictional crush, I had a very soft spot in my heart for Matthew in The Rooftop Garden, and a very, very sort of fictional crush for a book that I read much earlier in the year. This book, Small Pleasures by Claire Chambers. The more I think about it, the more I realize how much I enjoyed this book. And the woman in the book who's a journalist, oh, it's raining! Let's have some thunder. So the protagonist in this book is a woman named Jean Swinney, and she's investigating an immaculate conception by a woman named Gretchen Tilbury. And Gretchen Tilbury is married to a man named Howard, but it turns out that they kind of have a platonic relationship. I don't want to give too much of the book away, or there's not a sexual a relationship between them, even though they're married, and Jean falls in love with Howard. And Howard's character is very lovable as a companion and as a friend and as a potential partner. So I kind of fell for him a little bit too. And the other person who I kind of have a crush on, and I don't have the book with me. Where is it? Oh, no, I do have the book with me. I kind of have a little bit of a crush on Jude. I know. What's wrong with me? Should I get my head checked? I did have a soft spot for Jude as well. Newest favorite character. Okay. So I think that I have two new favorite characters. So these are books that I'm reading right now or that I've read this month. And I haven't been able to wrap them up, but I will be wrapping them up at the end of this month in a week or so. The first is Francie in Francie's Got a Gun. This little kid has so much gumption and she's so fierce, and I just fell for this character in a massive, massive way. She's just got a lot of grit and she's in tough circumstances, and she's just a really, to me, really charming kid. So Francie is one of my new favorite fictional characters. There are three sisters in this book, and Kosar is the character, I hope I'm saying her name right, Kosar is the character who narrates the book. And she is also tough as nails. And it's about her and her three sisters who are orphaned. And she is just, again, she's got a lot of chutzpah, we would say. I do like the character of Demon in Deeper and Copperhead as well, but I feel like there's lots of chit chat about Demon Copperhead, so I'm going to leave that out of this conversation. And this book I really do recommend. It was really good. It won the Carol Shields Prize, and I haven't heard that many people on BookTube talking about it. So BookTubers, pay attention. Book that made you cry. A book that made you cry. Like literally Misery May just happened. And me, I'm a crier. If you haven't seen the vlog, the reading vlog where I sob while reading Women Talking and Sarah Pulley's memoir, Run Towards Danger or Run Towards the Danger. I don't have them physically in I have so many books around me and I don't have those physically with me. That made me cry, so you can check out that vlog and you can watch me cry while I read those books. But the most recent book that made me really sad, The Swimmers, I think really hit me in a hard spot, but also How High We Go in the Dark. Yeah, that was a tough one. I think it was Aaron who said that in his comments on one of my videos that How High We Go in the Dark is one of the books that made him, like, he was crying in public. So definitely very sad. I'm not sure that everybody would cry reading this book, because I think it's possible to put a little bit of distance, because it's about a futuristic plague dystopian kind of set of stories that are interwoven. But there's one story about a pig who's being tested on, and I don't know. I have a problem with animals and them dying. It was sad. It was very sad. I'm not going to cry right now, but it was sad. It was sad. So definitely How High We Go in the Dark made me cry. But it wasn't the only book. There's quite a few that made me cry. A book that made you happy. So I realized when I was preparing for this that I don't have a lot of options for books that made me very happy. There are not very many books that made me happy so far. And that means that, guess what? My July TBR is going to be full of murder mysteries and cracking, funny books. And I mean, I read Romantic Comedy by Curtis Sittenfeld and it was very enjoyable, but I can't say that it made me happy. It didn't make me feel happy. This book, Small Pleasures, which I just talked about, did make me feel happy because it celebrates the little things that make life enjoyable, and they're very specific to the era that this book is set in, which is in 1957. And it's little things like, I talked about this in my recent reads video where I talked about this book, little things like picnics and fruits and sewing and gardening and like all these really innocent little things like crossword puzzles, all the little things that gave pleasure to people at this time. And I don't know, it just made me really happy. It was a very wholesome book. It made me happy. Most beautiful book you've bought this year or that you've been gifted this year. So I have a few. I did that tag judging books by their covers, and there are a lot of beautiful books that I've shown in that video, but they're not from this year. So I was given as a gift for my birthday, The Years by Virginia Woolf. And I do find that these vintage classics editions are very beautiful. They have these painted covers and quotes on the back. And I think that's quite beautiful. These beautiful kind of end pages. And then the painting carries on in a certain way. Anyway, that's quite beautiful. It was a lovely gift for my birthday. And then other than that, I just ended up, I was reading this on a loan and I ended up buying it because I was having a bit of a hard time following it on the digital copy. Not following it, but I just wanted to have a physical copy. So I'm reading this right now with Lori, Maps of Our Spectacular Bodies, and I do think that this is quite a beautiful cover. I love it. I also purchased I Who Have Never Known Men, and I talked about this in that judging books by their covers video because I really like the color combinations. I really like faces on book covers, I've also realized, which leads me to, this isn't a face, but it's the back painting of a back of a woman's head, Zori, which I just purchased by Layered Hunt, which I haven't gotten to yet, but I do think this is a really pretty cover. Also, Mommy, this is a beautiful book. Those are the most beautiful books that I've purchased. I am trying to get a little bit better about, being a bit more selective about purchasing books because I'm watching, interest rates are going up and I'm watching my money, just like most of us. So I'm trying to get more books out of the library. Last question. What books do you need to read by the end of the year? Oh, I think I missed a question. I did. I missed question 4. I always miss a question when I do these. So question 4 was most anticipated release for the second half of the year. For me, I think I'm going to say Ann Patchett's got a book coming out called, it's coming this summer, called Tom Lake. It's supposed to come out on August 8th. So I'm really looking forward to that. She has not steered me wrong. Black Butterflies, hopefully, is going to be a book that I can get. I am hoping. I'd like to read that when it comes out here in Canada. I also am looking forward to reading Zadie Smith's new book, which actually Scott talked about in a recent video for his picks for the Booker. I really want to read The Quiet Tenant by Clémence Michalon. I really want to read a bit more like psychological thriller horrors moving into the second half of the summer. I'm interested in Killingly by Catherine Buettner. There's just so many books. And Small Worlds, I think it's already been published in the UK. I'm not sure if it's published here, by Caleb Zuman Nelson is another book that I'm really looking forward to reading. And that brings us to the very last question, which is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? So aside from all the ones that I just named, so there's obviously a lot going on in BookTube. I love it. I think, sadly, it's a result potentially of the writer's strike, which is just terrible. I'm literally not going to renew my Netflix subscription. I'm so mad about the writer's strike. I need to continue with this project that I started with the books that my daughter read in her college courses. I still need to get to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Monkey Beach, Fish in Exile, Streetcar Named Desire, and Night. You can hear more about that in I talked about this in my plans for the summer. I really need to get to Middlemarch, like as in get to it seriously. I think I'm gonna have to put myself on a schedule with Middlemarch because I'm not getting to it in the way that I had hoped, and I want to read Middlemarch this summer. So that has to happen. I really want to get to Milkfed because I've talked about Milkfed a lot and I haven't read it yet. So that is going on one of my TBRs in the near future. I really want to read The Magician because this is an author, Colm Tobin, that I have heard so much about and I haven't read yet, and I need to read his books. I need to. And I really want to read The Birthday Party by Laurent Mauvignier. It was talked about a lot for the International Booker Prize, and I did order it at that time, and I really want to read it before the end of the year. And then lastly, discussing Booker type stuff. I know that people are going to be reading the books that they think are going to win the Booker Prize. They're going to make predictions. They're going to read the long list, etc., etc. This is just not something that I can do or want to do. It's too much for me. But I did have a project that I talked about at the beginning of the year where I would read Booker Prize winning books from previous years. So the two that I need to read this year are The Promise and Shuggy Bane, and I talked about that already in the Quarter Year Crisis tag. I think I also talked about some classics in the Quarter Year Crisis tag that I really wanted to get to. I didn't go back and review what I'd said there, so if I'm inconsistent, I apologize in advance. Inconsistency is my middle name. Anyway, I do try to be consistent, but I just fail a lot at it. So here's to failing at consistency. Thanks everyone for watching as always. I guess I'm supposed to encourage you to like and subscribe. I think liking the video makes a big difference to the channel, and I noticed that I have 400 subscribers, which is super exciting. I'm so excited about that, but when I get to 500, I'm going to do a Q&A, and I'm sure everybody wants a Q&A from me because I don't share enough of my life already, right? So if you haven't subscribed yet, just take the plunge, I guess. And there'll be more content coming soon. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. I hope you're having a great summer so far. Bye! Distracted by texts from my girlfriend who had a party, who I was shucking oysters and had a little injury. She gave me a Hello Kitty. She gave me a Hello Kitty. Focus. Focus. Hello Kitty. Band-Aid, because she's the coolest, and she's offering me now 5 bottles of partially drank wine and 10 oysters left over from the party. So, because my daughter loves oysters. And anyway, mid-year freakout tag. Stay on point. Stay on topic, Jessica. Those who are orphaned unexpectedly, and well, who's orphaned not unexpectedly. Hated release for the second half of the year. I don't know if you heard that, but it was Celebrate Good Times. They must be happy about the rain. Oh, Jessica, you're so cheesy.